Hello, everyone. Welcome to our session, How to Get the Best Results with Outsourced Talent, as part of the 2021 Unvalley Conference. My name is Jen Consalvo, and I'm the co-CEO at a company called Established. We're the company that produces a program called Startup of the Year. It's a program and community geared towards startups. If you're a startup, an investor, or a mentor type, please join us there. See the link in the chat. We'll drop one in there soon, but we'd love to get you involved. We also work with clients ranging from NASA to the Air Force, banks, insurance companies, economic development groups, anyone who really has a startup or innovation strategy. And we also help produce this conference, the Unvalley Conference, and we're thrilled to have all of you here with us today. So kicking it off, I am joined by Doug, Calvin, and Matt, and we're going to be asking them some questions. But we want this to be as interactive as possible. So please go, for most of you, it should be on the right-hand side. There's a chat area where you can have a conversation. I'm sure you will be having conversations, but there's a Q&A area. Go in there, click the blue Ask a Question button and add your questions there. And we will be watching that and answering your questions as soon as we see them or can get to them. Let's see what else. I think that's about it. We're going to dive in and kick off this conversation. So just a very brief introduction. Today with us, we have Doug Allgood, the president and CEO of BlackInk IT. We have Calvin Hendryx-Parker, the co-founder and CTO of 6 Feet Up. And Matt DeCoursey is the co-founder and CEO of Fullscale. So welcome, Doug, Calvin, and Matt. I'm very excited to have you all joining us today.
That's great to be here.
Hello.
Yeah, it is great to be here.
Let's kick it off by talking a little bit about your experience with outsourced talent and how it's helped you and your respective companies, or just how it's been part of your experience. So let's go with, start with Calvin, then Doug, then Matt.
Okay. I mean, for us, we provide kind of both sides of the coin of outsourced talent, or have participated in both aspects of outsourced talent, being outsourced talent for other dev teams who are building a product or in a company from our consulting aspect of 6 Feet Up. But on the flip side of that, we don't always have all the capacity we need to be able to service all the client needs coming in. So we have definitely leveraged partnerships and building outsourced talent relationships between other companies who are similar to us. Some may look at them as competitors. We've always seen them as more partners and collaborators when we need help to produce help for whatever kind of project we're working on. So I guess we kind of have both aspects going there. I'll leave it at that for the moment. We can talk about how that gets built later, I think.
Awesome. Thank you, Calvin. Doug?
Yeah, BlackInk has a very similar story, right? We provide an outsourced managed IT solution for organizations. So they're certainly using us in that capacity, and to scale and provide flexibility from time to time, we need to be able to bring other talent in to assist us, especially if it's in different regions where we may not have local skill sets and we need to be able to do something locally. But we're also, using talent that we've outsourced for, law firms to help us with contracts, and attorneys to help us with tax and CFO type services. HR, and so there's a swath of things that we have experience with, and using those skills, right, as well as providing them, just like has been said.
Awesome. Matt?
I'm the CEO and founder of Fullscale. We build software teams for North American software companies. We have 200 employees in Cebu City in the Philippines. So we, rather than short-term needs, build teams that exist for our clients in perpetuity. So yeah, have a little experience with the outsource side of things as well.
Mm-hmm. Great. So let's start with the downsides, because that's where people immediately, I feel like there's been over the years, you mention outsourcing and people are like, oh, there's kind of strong opinions one way or the other. When you think about outsourcing or offshoring, outsourcing, what are the downsides of utilizing outsourced talent?
So if it's okay, I'll jump in. I mean, so in a couple of areas of my career, I've had a chance to work on both the offshore and large scale projects where we outsourced it. And defining things very well becomes important. And it's difficult in an agile type development environment to always define what it is that the outcomes are that we need to achieve. But that becomes a key piece of that relationship. And then the other component is, how are you going to support it later, right? What's that ongoing relationship? So we're advising organizations all the time with, hey, if you're going to go and outsource this to get developed, as well as, outsourcing us, right? What are the key measures of success going to look like? And then when it's done, when you have this finished product, how are you going to support it on an ongoing basis? And was it created in a way that makes that support achievable, right? Was it created using an architecture and a design that enables others to be able to jump in and, make the product continue to mature? Or do you then contract with that same organization an ongoing support agreement? And that tends to work well too, right? But you've got to have some way to support the back end when you're done.
Yeah, I would agree with the kind of statement of the downsides are going to be some people may be resistant to bringing in consultants to help out in their internal development teams because they feel like those people may just hand some software over the wall and then they're out of the picture. And now you've got this new mystery box that you're trying to support. You don't understand all the components that make up what it is. And even before that all gets started, like Doug kind of mentioned, the real interface, the real success is going to be determined by how well you've defined what is to be delivered. And that onus is on whoever is consuming the outsourced talent and not on the outsourced talent. They're probably doing the best they can do. And the level of communication and how well you can explain or convey the requirements, the needs, the real problem is going to be highly dependent on your abilities.
I think the potential downsides of outsourcing or offshoring are related oftentimes to transparency and communication. And, much like Doug and Calvin are talking about, it's not uncommon for software companies to go into statement of work contracts and not have things clearly defined. And then they're oftentimes working with people that are on the other side of the world. I mean, we've built our whole business model around trying to correct those things and making sure that there is a transparent access to people's teams. I think especially in startups, it's important that founders be involved and have their sleeves rolled up the whole time and not just checking in once a month to see if we've made progress. I think it's also important to understand and know who's working on your product, not just, once again, checking in 30, 45, and 6 months down the road, only to realize you're now 3 months behind.
So is it really looking at, the outsourced talent more as an extension of your team, part of your team, trying to bring them in? Where do you, as a company who's considering outsourcing, how do you really approach it and try to design it into your workflow? Should you literally bring them in and try to make them, at least for the term that you'll be working with them, sort of part of that team and culture? Or do you approach it differently?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought
I think you should. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say that the word culture there was actually a really interesting term, because for us, when we brought outsourced talent in to help us fill a gap or a need, we treated those outsourced resources just like any resource we would have actually hired into our team. We use a lot of assessments like predictive index or the Colby scores or DISC to understand how a person behaves and operates and kind of what their real strengths are going to be. And we want to play to those. We want to understand, if we assign you a certain kind of work, is that suited to your behaviors that are kind of evident from some of those assessments? I know assessments aren't the end all be all, but they're a good indicator and help us keep maintaining that culture of the team itself.
We do a very similar thing at Full Scale where we're doing technical assessments, and then that's just going to tell you one side of someone's story. The other side is like who they are as a person. Do they want to be a leader of a team, or do they prefer to work alone? What's their level of communication and skill? And another thing too, when you're offshoring, I think it's pretty important that you speak the same language. that the company you're servicing does. And that's a big thing for us. And, operating in the Philippines, it's the third largest English speaking population in the world. And so that's not a problem for us. But if we don't hire people that aren't highly fluent, because if you can't communicate with the people that if you're trying to help someone create their vision and build their dream, but you can't communicate with them about it, in our opinion, it's game over.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And what kind of, just getting at a tactical level, what kind of tools, what kind of processes do you guys recommend? So for someone who's thinking about doing this, do you bring them right in and add them to all of your project management tools, your communication tools? Do you get them in your Slack?
We've done that. I mean, so each of the projects where we've been using talent to augment what we're doing, yeah, we've treated them just like what Calvin said. We've treated them as a member of the team, right? And on a reciprocal basis, the companies that hire us, we're attending Christmas parties. We're part of the fabric of those organizations. We tend to have longer term relationships. I mean, we've got companies we've been servicing for 20 years, right? So, but we become part of that. And this culture piece is so pivotal, because if there's not a culture alignment, then it becomes it's a non-starter, right? So we interview and treat them as if we're hiring them, and bring that, as part of the team. And again, all the tool sets would be, part of what we would be investing in.
Yeah, I would recommend folks invest in that onboarding process. We recently onboarded some of our team members into a client project, and they were just blown away with how smooth that process went of getting them into the fold of all their tools, their build, the email, like Slack, all the things. Like day one when they showed up, there was no time wasted figuring out the environment and the tools. Like everything was just set up and ready to go. And the same goes for us bringing people into our team. I know because we're a smaller team, we've not focused as much on automating and provisioning of accounts and all kind of the tediousness of that kind of thing, but it is worth doing.
Mm-hmm.
We built our own system to manage that, and some of those things are just like simple daily reports to hold people accountable, time clocks, being able to look for other team members, see who's on your team, and then other things too is like you look at foreign countries have different holidays and dates, and as Americans, we're not inherently we don't know that tomorrow might be a holiday halfway around the world. But on the flip side, we also think it's really important that our team become our client's team, and that they don't have to learn how to do a whole bunch of new stuff just to let us be a service provider. So we adapt to whatever communication tools, project management, all of that our clients use. But at the same time, like I think simple things just like Slack, which can be, $8-10 a month. It can make a tremendous amount of improvement in communication. And there's a million tools out there, but I think you should be able to, ping someone and get a hold of them and not have to just wait for an email reply, anything in that regard. And then, another thing too is, developers are also say the commits don't lie. So things like GitHub and seeing code getting pushed up. And when clients speak up about stuff in our world, it's usually because they're not seeing Git commits the same way that they want to. So there's a lot of stuff out there that's pretty effective, in my opinion.
Yeah, and then building on the Slack, we are heavy users of Slack, and I think that there's a lot of great integrations with tools that run inside of the Slack environment for folks. Things like, Matt, you brought this up, the kind of a check-in tool where we have a report out tool that's built into Slack. We just subscribe to it, and now every day, every developer answers 3 simple questions, and it gives us a dashboard of like how they're feeling, what's blocking progress. We're uncovering a lot more and getting a lot more transparency in our own teams with those kinds of tools. And so we try to bring those kinds of same practices into our customers as well, if they're not fully utilizing some of these advantages.
Plug out there for at least the Microsoft Teams component. Many of our clients are, using Microsoft 365 as a core to what they do, and, giving them another tool that they got to learn. So if we can, leverage. So we've built ways to leverage Teams as an ongoing communication channel that also enables us, because many of these clients have regulatory compliance needs, and enables us to achieve those goals too. So I do think the collaboration piece is there. I want to touch on one other thing with culture. As we work internationally, one of the things that we'll see is the culture, there might have not only just holidays, but just the way they think about things. And many times what we'll see is, yes, I can do that. It's always, I can do that. I can do that. I can do that. And in part, it's because that's just their culture, right? Is, hey, I can learn anything because I've got multiple degrees and I've got all these great things I've done. And they are. It's great. We've had to make sure that we align working with those outsourced resources from that perspective to say, show me examples of where you've done it, not can you do it, right? And that's a subtlety, but it's just one of those culture elements when you are working internationally in terms of a frame of reference that people have.
And there are cultures
I think
that is true.
Yeah,
like,
Doug has a key point there, right?
Yeah. They'll say no, but then they come back the next day and they've done it. And you're like, whoa.
There's an easy way to fix that. And, a lot of countries, it's considered dangerous, risky, and stupid to tell your boss no. And that's where you get into this culture of yes. And I compare it to giving a builder a blueprint, and he looks at it and he says, oh man, this is going to fall over after I build it. But they told me to build it, so I probably should. And the easiest way to fix that is to license and empower the people that are on your outsourced teams. You say, hey, look, I hired you because you're an expert. Welcome to the team. Your opinion's valued. And I want and need you to tell me when you see a problem and what you think the solution is. And I find that when you do that, people feel a lot more comfortable about it, where a lot of times, if not, they just kind of quietly sit there and nod heads and say yes. So encourage people to have critical thinking and to tender solutions whenever possible.
And you'll have to continually remind them that it's okay to do that, because we've run into that as well. Again, this gets back to you determine a lot of how this is successful by how you behave and what your culture is, and whether it's accepting of new ideas or whether it's off-putting or toxic.
Interesting. So one question that popped up from Cameron, if you're bringing in outside work, why offshore as opposed to finding local talent and consultants to better impact your local economy?
Because there's 350,000 open IT jobs in the US, and you're going to compete it's kind of like Gladiator out locally. If it's not just a financial incentive, then sometimes it's just literally lack of availability. It's crazy. And we're on 4 straight months this year of increased job postings. Like the talent gap and accessibility it's real. It's a struggle. And for those of us and I know Calvin and Doug probably deal with this too. If you're in the business we're in, at some point, someone says, you're sending jobs away. No, we're not. There aren't people here to do them. It's legitimately such a wide gap, and it's gotten so much wider, where a lot of these other places, like where our office is at, they graduate 3,000 IT students a year. The state of Kansas had 300 2 years ago. There's a reason that this is going on, but yeah, good luck finding local. And then it's nasty out there. You're in Indianapolis, we're in Kansas City. These are like the 24th and 25th biggest markets in the country, and you're still going to pay a huge premium for locals. So if you look at someone that makes $100 an hour compared to someone that makes 25, that person that makes $100 an hour better be 4 times faster or 4 times better than the offshore outsourced talent you're getting. That's the ratio. Because if they're not, you're overpaying.
Yeah, Matt brings a good point up in terms of the wage inflation. It's tough, but I do think a diverse, balanced approach helps. And we are investing in local schools, both at high school and college. Right, we're trying to work on the talent problem by opening up opportunities and looking for ways that we can grow and mature talent. But it is this wage inflation issue, and the lack of some of that talent is an ongoing problem.
Yeah. I mean, we've been focusing on hiring local folks. We've even gotten incentives from the state to hire local folks, but we are now, because of the pandemic and going fully remote, we were already a partial remote company, but now we're a remote first company. We have folks from South Africa to California at this point and all the time zones in between. But that's because we found the right talent has existed outside of Indiana. Unfortunately, I'd love to hire folks here. Now that said, I am not hiring people who are $25 an hour. We have a different. I think we service a different problem set. A lot of our work is very, very, I don't know, sophisticated, complicated, or kind of more the higher end thing. We just don't have a junior team in house, and so I would outsource myself, or I would look for outsourced talent to fill more junior spots or junior type work when that arises. We've been
our
focusing heavily.
Our model's hybrid as well. Like we require our clients to have some local presence, and then we want to. It's a hub and spoke model, and you can by dollar cost averaging the seats across a larger team, you can afford to get the best people locally. You just might not have 6 of them. So right. I think it's important. There is a lot to be said about being in the same room with someone and saying, "Hey, look," and pointing, as opposed to. But I've been doing this for 12 years, and you look at like the resolution and the clarity that we have in a room like this. That wasn't a possibility 10 years ago. So the ability to communicate is at an all-time high, and that I think that's helpful as well.
As long as you know how to use the tools and use them in the right way.
Right.
Sure.
And Hannah, I think we answered your question, but I want to make sure you asked, are any of your companies partnering with schools to be a talent feed for new hires? If so, do you feel like you're getting quality hires from these programs? So Doug, you touched on that. Is that starting to pay off?
Yeah, and it's getting better, right? We've had to give feedback about the things they're learning. Right, especially even in the security area, you can graduate somebody with a degree, in information security, cybersecurity, whatever they want to call it, and if they don't understand how technically the thing started to begin with, it's difficult to be able to dig in and understand that, do any forensics, or be able to prevent problems in the future, right? So, but it's getting better, and I have hope that we're going to develop this and give these opportunities. And I think that's part of how we're investing then in the community too, is to be able to give opportunities locally and create those relationships and partnerships.
Mm-hmm.
We're doing it locally, but where our office is local in the Philippines, that's where we hire developers. So that's where we're investing in school programs. We have agreements and relationships with 7 different computer science schools, but that's where we hire developers. So we're giving scholarships out there. I commend Doug for what you're doing. At the same time, I mean, these are generational problems that we're not going to see go away here, probably in our lifetime. I mean, realistically, writing code is the modern day version of manufacturing. But you can ship it around the world with the push of a button. It doesn't have to ride on a boat. It doesn't have to go through customs or anything like that. So it's going to be tough for us to shore that gap up locally. So that's probably a whole nother stage and topic for you.
I was just going to say that could probably be an entire session, right? About the future of how we look at jobs in this country and education and where we're bringing people. So let's jump on. I think this was Matt's question. Would love to hear more about each of your team's onboarding processes. I'm not sure if any of that would be proprietary to your own company and what you bring out there. But if any of you would be open to sharing that, I think a lot of people would like to hear a little bit more about onboarding.
We've created 40 different coding assessments. And I don't mind sharing because we actually use the HackerRank platform to use it, which is something that anybody watching, you can go use their kind of cookie cutter stuff, and it's good. But we went through and kind of made our own versions of it. I think if you're assessing people, it's important on a technical level to just make sure that they're not answering a bunch of trivia questions, because a lot of assessments are that. And, so we've created, like I said, we call them certifications. And that, they're hard. Make it difficult. because those things can weed out 80. We want the top 10 to 20% of applicants. Everyone else can apply later. So that's our first, we have 400 people a month that apply to work at our company. So we don't want to interview all 400 of them. So we use the coding assessments. And then, another thing Calvin mentioned, we don't use, but things like DISC, like personality assessments, they'll tell you a lot about someone, and they'll tell you a lot about what they're interested in, what they're going to behave. I actually wrote a whole chapter in one of my books about DISC. I'm a big believer in it, but we look for things like relevant experience, confidence, attitude, communication, critical thinking, marketability, just like different stuff, and ask a lot of questions. It's amazing how far you can get by asking a developer, hey, do you want to work on front end or back end or both? Because if you put people in the wrong roles, they're going to quit.
Yeah. No, I was going to say, before we even onboard anybody, those assessments are really key. Before we even interview anyone, they have to fill out a predictive index. And that's going to give us, it's a behavioral assessment, where DISC is a personality assessment. They cover two different spectrums of need and kind of the human person you're looking at. And they are still a human in our book. But it was important for us to, I know that certain profiles match certain types of jobs better. Just like Matt just said, like a back-end person is going to have a specific kind of profile. Now, it's not hard and fast and true, and obviously we look at everybody, but those are really, really strong indicators. We've seen where we've made exceptions to those rules. Like our gut just tells us maybe this person's going to work, or we really want them to work, and it's the tools don't lie, and we should have trusted the tool sometimes over our own gut, which I know is counterintuitive. As people, we want to. I want to love and like everyone who comes in the door, so they don't let me choose who gets to be interviewed anyway, because I love everybody. So that's why the tools are better to have than me.
Know thyself.
Yeah. Well, and that's part of these assessments, is knowing how you behave and knowing where your strengths lie and knowing what you're going to be 10x at. Matt mentioned like that, if you got a developer who's being paid $100 an hour, they better be 4x, or at least 4 times more efficient or 4 times more valuable. And I believe we can find that fit, but you got to know yourself before you can go after one of those kinds of jobs.
If you're hiring developers, there's one rule that's true every time. The weirder they are, the probably better they are at being a developer. So if you get someone that like shows up to an interview with a cape on or something, hire them on the spot. Like one of our most brilliant programmers that's kind of famous now came to his interview wearing bedroom slippers, and because he forgot to put on his shoes.
I think
they didn't want to hire him. I found out. I said, you go find that guy in the parking lot and bring him back in and sign him up. And yeah, it's
Doug.
Very interesting.
Yeah, I'd echo the PI and the tools to help. Right, we quite frankly, we look at the person first, knowing that if we have the right individual, we can teach them about anything. So we're probably more focused on the person and who they are. Because we interview lots of great people. They just might not be a good fit for us. But then on the onboarding aspect, we're trying to take that and have fun with it, right? To me, those first couple of days in a company are going to dictate whether that employee is going to stay with us long term or not. How they feel about coming into the organization, how they feel welcomed, how they feel integrated and getting to know people. And that, not only were we ready for them, but we were prepared with thoughtful things that we can give them to do to begin to learn the organization, our clients, and the tools. And so I do think focusing energy there has a huge payback.
Yep. So with only 1 minute left, I don't think we'll be able to get through the remaining questions. So maybe just around the horn, any last tips on whether it's, how to get the most out of your outsourcing, trying to manage your team and manage all of the risks with outsourcing? Any last tips?
There's smart people everywhere. Don't tell yourself that because they're not in America that for some reason they can't do the job. There's smart people all over the world. You just have to get to the bottom of whether, much like Doug and Calvin have been saying, are they the right fit for you? Are they the right organization? Be a global citizen. That's my advice.
Yeah,
Calvin?
I'll add into that you better be prepared yourself to use that talent wisely. There's definitely it's not just a throw it over the wall and expect some kind of value to come back. You are going to be, there's a direct relationship, a direct line into what you get out of this relationship. And so the more you put into it, the better you communicate, the better your tools are, the better your culture fits are, the better results you're going to get out of this.
I think there's some good principles in the EOS model and the book Traction.
Oh, another US person.
Right?
Nice.
Yeah. Got to get this. You got to have clear, measurable, outcomes that everybody is working towards.
Wow, we could have done a whole session on EOS.
Yeah.
We are an EOS company as well.
Wait, so for the audience and myself, EOS, can you just...
Entrepreneurial Operating System. It is the one operating system you should be running your company on. We've been in it 3 years, but yeah, there's a lot of great principles in that Traction book alone that Doug just mentioned. You should pick it up and at least don't be an EOS company necessarily, but that's a good book.
Yep.
Great. And for anyone in the audience who we did not get to your question, if any of them want to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to reach you?
You can find me on Twitter at CalvinHP or the 6 Feet Up blog, 6feetup.com/blog.
You can
Doug,
email
Allgood.
me, deco@fullscale.io, or we publish the Startup Hustle podcast 5 days a week. So we've probably already talked about most of it in there somewhere.
Yeah.
Great.
At Doug Allgood on Twitter, on LinkedIn, or dallgood@blackinkit.com.
Fantastic. Thank you, all three of you, for being with us today and sharing your insights. Thank you, everyone in the audience, for your questions. Coming up next, let's see, we have a lunch break. We have a keynote later with Ashley Dodge, where she'll be talking about how to build a community to grow your SaaS company. And thank you all again for being part of Unvalley. Have a great afternoon.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.